spend enough time thanking my mother for the gifts she has given me. I don't spend enough hours waiting in the river, letting cool water wash over my feet. I get caught up in the tracks I have laid, in the path that's right in front of me. I get blinded by the promise of the future and forget about the world around me. But my love keeps growing. Every morning the birds still sing. Day and night I am longing for a life that really makes my heart beat. Take my time with you for granted.
Transit District Board of Directors meeting at this Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, and it is 6:30 p.m. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll note for the record that we do have a quorum present with 3 board members in present physically, and then 2, Director Navarro and Director Duncan, present virtually. Next, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I will ask our General Manager, Alan Pollock, to lead us in the safety moment.
Thank you. So the National Safety Council has established June as National Safety Month in the United States. The goal of the Safety Month is to increase public awareness of the leading safety and health risks that are increased in the summer months and to decrease the number of injuries and deaths at home and workplaces. The following are summer safety tips to keep in mind for you and your family in order to keep out of the emergency room. Stay hydrated. Dehydration is a safety concern during the summer months. Be sure to drink enough liquids throughout the day, as our bodies can lose a lot of water through perspiration when it gets hot. Protect your skin. Use a sunscreen 30 minutes before going out and reapply every 2 hours or after swimming or sweating. Limit sun exposure during the peak intensity hours between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and stay in the shade when possible. Water safety. Remember to always have adult supervision for children, whether they're in a pool or playing in the sand at the seashore. Having someone who can help them should an emergency arise is essential. And eye safety. The sun's ultraviolet light can harm the eyes. Wear sunglasses year-round whenever you're out in the sun. So keep in mind, these would be a great idea to make sure these safety tips are in mind if you happen to be outside during an extended period, say for example at a bus rodeo on July 15th. Because we will be at Volcano Stadium, lots of concretes. That concludes my message.
Thank you, General Manager Pollock. Next, we'll proceed to the announcements and changes to the agenda, and I'll be adding an action item which is about an update to the process to the SCATS Policy Committee, Cooperative Agreement and Bylaws, and I will stick in the action items as action item B for tonight. Next, we'll go ahead and we'll move to the presentations, which is survey results presentation.
So I'll turn it over to Patricia Feeney to make introductions.
I want to invite our TransPro partner up this evening, and I fail to know his exact title, so I'm going to let him give that to you.
Good to go.
President Davison, members of the board, as well as General Manager Pollock and the executive leadership team. I'm pleased to be here presenting your Wave 2 results from your customer satisfaction and community value surveys that we've conducted recently. My name is Matt Webb. I'm a principal with TransPro Consulting, and really pleased to bring good results tonight. So about a year ago, that members of this board gathered in a board retreat and finalized the success outcomes for your strategic plan, which this body adopted last August. And pleased to present the second wave of results for your customer survey, as well as your community value, which support two of your success outcomes, both the community value as well as customer satisfaction. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to cover first your customer satisfaction results, dealing with both the Cherriots fixed route service as well as the Cherriots lift service that you provide. And then the second or the third part of the presentation will be a review of your community value survey. The community value survey is done and asks, the first two elements are for your customers, those people that use your service on a day in and day out basis. Community value surveys members of the Salem-Keizer community as large, and you'll see some of the results we do get a cross collaboration of both users of the Cherriots system as well as those that don't. We'll share those details as we go through. So thinking of the, starting off with the customer satisfaction, your results are not only presented tonight against the last previous wave, but also against industry sampled average of those clients and partner agencies that we work with across the country. And so you'll see your results compared against the first wave, which was conducted in fall of 2022, as well as 11 different fixed route agencies and 10 different paratransit agencies, and then 6 other community values surveys that we do across the country. So jumping into fixed route, highlights of, or the methodology first before we get into the highlights. So we do an intercept survey where we ride your service and look to survey every 4th customer, and we do a random sampling. For this effort, we surveyed 446 customers surveyed, which is actually an increase. We were in the field for 6 days over the period of May 4th to 9th. And resulted in an accuracy of 95% confidence with a margin of error of plus or minus 4.6%. Really strong data that we feel provides a representative sampling. All of the surveys were conducted in person using an electronic survey. And for their participation, customers were giving a all-day pass as a thanks for their time and efforts in responding to the survey. So highlights, next slide. So one of the things that for your customer satisfaction you set is focusing on the Net Promoter Score. Just a refresher, the Net Promoter Score asks a question: how likely would you be to recommend riding Cherriots service to a friend or neighbor? The way the Net Promoter Score works is that 9s and 10s are considered your promoters, 0s through 6 are your detractors, and 7s and 8s are sort of neutral, so they don't count. And so you take your promoters, those that answer that question with the 9s and 10, and you subtract 0 through 6, and that gets you your Net Promoter Score. Across 11 different agencies that we work with, the industry sampled average is 33, and you see it's a scale from negative 100 all the way up to a positive 100. And yes, there are some agencies out there that have negative numbers. So next slide. So looking at Cherriots Net Promoter Score, 52. And so looking at the last wave, 65, which is an extremely high Net Promoter Score. If you look at other industries, that ranks just about even, if not above Amazon and many different service-oriented industries. Super strong. 52, even though that is a reduction of 13 points, 52 is still a super strong Net Promoter Score. We work with, again, those 11 different agencies, and we've had many ask us, how does Cherriots do it? And so this team and this board should be proud of the service that is provided through your fixed route service. The major change from 65 to 52 is you lost some of your promoters down to your passive. So they went from a 9 and 10 down to a 7 and 8. This happens with the Net Promoter Score, and it's why we encourage agencies to focus on other indices other than just the Net Promoter Score. And we'll talk about those now. So of the respondents that took your fixed route survey, 87% of the customers are satisfied with Cherriots bus service, and 95% of the customers believe that Cherriots brings value to the community. Talking about community value twice, this is for the riders, that they feel that by using the service, the Cherriots service brings value to the community. We ask a series of questions about what's most important to your riders, and you can see on the right, fixed route bus customers say hours of operation, on-time performance, reasonable fair price, and frequency are the four most important things. We'll talk about those over the next couple of slides. But thinking about your work session, as you go about laying out the South Salem Transit Center and thinking about what's most important, that on-time performance and thinking about how the service operates is very important to your customers. Your customers are most satisfied with safely operated buses and helpful customer service, both increases over last time. And less satisfied, although still strong marks, of bus stop cleanliness and hours of operation. So the factors here on the slide show what's most important to your bus customers. The hours of operation, on-time performance, fair price, frequency, and days of operation all sort of rank in the top 5. What we've seen with this wave compared to the last wave is the last wave, almost all of your importance factors were about 8%. We see a bit of a peaking of hours of operation, showing a little bit stronger on this survey. One of the other things we do as part of our survey analysis is not only do we talk about the importance, but we also look at that in axes of how satisfied are you. So we ask both those questions. We put them then in a quadrant analysis, and really allows us to provide insights to the agency about what are the areas that you need to work on. And so in that lower right quadrant, we identify those as the most important things to your customer and that they're least satisfied on. It allows the agency to sort of prioritize. We ask lots of questions in these surveys, but this allows us to sort of prioritize what are those areas that hopefully by making changes or improvements help move the needle for your overall satisfaction and your Net Promoter Score. So if we look at the next slide, the specific results for fixed route survey, you see an overall satisfaction of 87%, extremely high. And the importance areas of opportunity you see in that lower right-hand quadrant of the diagram there. Travel time, the hours of operation on the far right-hand side, if the further it is on the right-hand side of the quadrant, the more opportunity it is to make improvements with thinking about the importance and the level of satisfaction. Travel time, on-time performance, hours of operation, those are really the top 3 areas that your satisfaction levels, you can move those up based on what your customers this last wave have shown is most important. Next slide. So this provides a side-by-side comparison from the last wave. So on the screen, the light blue is the wave 1 from fall of 2022. The darker blue is the current wave that we did. And then the gray bar represents the industry sampled average. So you can see across the board, Cherriots is equal to or greater than those areas with the ISA, with the exception of fair price and hours of operation. Fair price, when we presented this to the leadership team, we asked the question because really that didn't make sense, especially with some of the fare policies where you're actually reducing fare, and actually the leadership team provides some insights to this that you may, two things. One, people hear fare change, and even though you're lowering it, they don't read below the headline. The other thing is with your media market encompassing a lot of activities and changes in the Portland area, they may see fare changes. We asked the survey question. That's why that dipped so much, because obviously you haven't made any fare changes where you're increasing or, so always encourage our partner agencies to, take the data with a grain of salt. And so this is one that we would, say maybe some media overlap from a adjacent system. Next slide. And so these are, again, the other areas of opportunity, all at or above the industry sampled average. Strong results across the board for your fixed route service. Next slide. Strengths to maintain. There was one area that was above the overall satisfaction and in that upper right-hand quadrant, and that is the helpful drivers. You can see an increase over your last wave, and so clearly your customers appreciate the helpful drivers and the service that your operators provide, especially when you look at the industry sampled average. They have a very tough job, and it's clear that your customers appreciate the way that they deliver that service. So our recommendation would be making sure that the operators see this, and kudos to them for doing and providing strong service. So then the other part of the overall value and satisfaction that we ask is the community value and overall satisfaction. These are those results that we already presented. And then we asked the question, in the past year, Cherriots service has gotten worse, stayed about the same, and gotten better. And you can see with the dark blue that a little bit of a dip here, either stayed about the same or gotten slightly better, was slightly lower than the first wave, but both of them are definitely better than the industry sampled average. Now I'll move on to the lift survey that we did. We do this a little bit differently. This survey methodology, instead of doing the intercept on board, we get a list of the customers that have taken a trip within the last 6 months. We contact them directly via a phone survey. We have trained surveyors, and we at this wave we interviewed 237 customers over 8 days, April 3rd through the 11th. Again, customers were given a one-day pass as thanking them for their completion of the survey. Results are accurate at 95% confidence interval with a margin of error of plus or minus 6.4, a little bit higher because of the sample size was a little bit lower that we did, but we did get through the entire list that was provided to us. So again, the Net Promoter Score. So the industry sampled average for paratransit services equivalent to lift service is 48. This wave, Cherriots scored a 51. Down, rather significantly from a astronomical number of 74. And so not to be surprised that it dropped. Yeah, you see in the second bar there, the majority of the change, was because of promoters went to passives. You didn't have any additional detractors, which is a good thing. And so there's obviously a lot of factors that may play into that. I think in talking with the leadership team, one of the things that is very important to your lift service is both the on time as well as the trip duration and trip length. With the increase of ridership and increased uses of lift service, one of the things that I think is probably happening with these results is that customers coming out of post-COVID may have been the only one on a lift service, and so their trip was point A to point B. Whereas if they're now on lift service and they have multiple, seats taking that same ride, they may be the fifth stop, and so their trip may be longer. Lots of different things to look at, and I know that the leadership team will take this and they're looking at those results. But again, Net Promoter Score is one metric. If you go to the next slide, super strong. 96% of customers are satisfied with the lift service, and all 100% believe that the service brings value to the Salem-Keizer community. Super strong numbers, again, across the board. On-time performance, friendly and helpful drivers, and scheduling ease and convenience are the most important factors for lift service customers. Again, presenting this in a way, and you see the difference between fixed route and lift service. Again, much greater emphasis on those top five, and then falls off rather significantly. So travel time and on-time performance are the two areas of opportunity. Again, super strong satisfaction level, and you can see the importance that the team definitely has an opportunity to move the needle. Probably not that great though when you're already at 95%. So see the wave over wave results, very similar. And again, thinking about the margin of error, these are pretty close to your original results. And strengths to maintain, obviously scheduling ease and convenience, safety and safely operating the vehicles, friendly and helpful drivers. Obviously this is another area where the operators of the lift service should be commended for just the way they conduct business. Clearly it's makes a mark and is meaningful to your customers. So this is the overall satisfaction. We did ask, this was the first time we asked the question on the left, Cherriots lift provides value to the community. We did not ask that in the previous, so there's not a wave one to compare to, but overall satisfaction with Cherriots lift service is the same as first wave. Super strong. Next, we'll transition to community value. Again, go to the next slide. This was done based on a survey instrument that was executed using a telephone bank survey. It was done from May 11th through the 15th. 386 responses were garnered with a margin of error of plus or minus 5%, and the confidence is 95% confidence level. We always achieve 95% confidence level, and we really like to have that margin of error at plus or minus 5%. Again, the communities, the ISA, I would say, and this is a little bit less important just because every community is different. It's important, you can look at it as sort of a benchmark of how you're doing, but there's a couple areas I'll point out with community value survey. This is really about what the Salem and Keizer community thinks of the Chariot service. And so I would be more focused from wave to wave versus the ISA. So 87% of community members feel Cherriots is valuable to the community. an increase of 1% from wave one. Community members, the most important areas of service that the community states is providing access to jobs, providing transportation options to people with special mobility needs, providing access to medical facilities, and providing affordable transportation options. The least value that was identified was providing opportunities for local affordable housing and managing financial sources well. This is a really telling slide. If you look on the left-hand side, so if you look at the far to right, on the far right hand, I've never used it, and I used to use it, but I don't anymore. If I can do my math on the fly, it's 86%. 86% of the surveys are not active users of Cherriots that we surveyed. 86% of them, even though they don't use the service, they see the value that this agency brings. Really powerful numbers when you stop and think about, you know, what this agency means to your community, and again, that is an increase from your last wave. And so those that stopped using, you can see on the right-hand side, 43 of those. We get a lot of, this is pretty common, I got a car or a license, and then there's others, and your top others were not part of a lifestyle or pandemic, and pandemic typically still is a top other response when we look at other communities. So the importance factors, Cherriots allows people to get to jobs, the transportation options, allows the medical access. I think you know, all of these are, you know, very consistent with the first wave as well. And I think the next slides show some of that. We look at the same key driver analysis. Again, the areas of opportunity that the community has stated. F and G reduces pollution and helps the environment, as well as access to the region and adjacent cities and counties. So thinking about those are all opportunities to continue to move, and I know your focus over the next year, you're already working on some of that as part of the work plan. The other things in the upper right hand, especially with community value, we encourage our partner agencies to don't lose track of those, because this is what the community values. And so this, the key driver analysis, is, you know, essentially anything right of that, the vertical axis there is, we feel is pretty important for the agency to keep an eye on. Your average value for areas of opportunity is at 74%. So access to the region and adjacent counties that went up, and reduces pollution and helps the environment stay about the same. So this, with this strengths to maintain, I think one of the things that's interesting with this, and over the next couple of slides with the community value, as you saw in the fixed route and in the paratransit, there's a little bit of volatility when we look at from wave to wave. But if you look at across all the things that are important and the strengths to maintain, through two waves in the fall and then also the spring, the community is pretty consistent about what's the strength to maintain. If you look, you know, across those bars there. So pretty good gauge when you go out and do your next one. You'll now have 3 data sets, and you know, can really say, this is more than just a once-off type survey. You now have data that, you know, if that trend line holds the same, you can be pretty confident those factors are important to the community. Same thing here, community value and awareness. This is the perception of financial stewardship. So again, the same level as the last wave, and a little bit lower than the ISA. And so I know this is an area of focus for the team, and but consistent from the last wave. And then we asked the question, name 3 features or amenities that Cherriots could add that would provide more value to the community. The top other responses is longer spans or weekend service, safety, better trained drivers, solar power, more environmentally friendly buses, also to make up that other category. The top 3 then is more routes to serve places I need to go and more frequent service. So that's an overview of the presentation for your both your customers and your community value. I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? Okay. I don't have a question, but I'd like to note that I think the timing on the fixed route survey is interesting, especially given the emphasis on hours of operations, a focus on that, because I think either the final day of the survey or the day after the survey conclude is when we expanded our hours of operation. So just wanted to note that that is maybe a contextual piece right there.
And you definitely, as you now have the start of a very strong database, and as you go about implementing your strategic plan, your next wave, will be able to tell you whether that's a spike,
Right.
Just because, again, media news, or is it more of really how your customers feel? So, really, I would just close with really strong kudos to the team. Goes a long way to implementing the strategic plan and having the data to help make this agency operate and move forward in an even more efficient manner. So well done.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the wealth of resources in the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Next, we'll proceed to the public comment. And so I'll note here for the record that we have 2 bits of public comment today. The first bit of public comment that I'll now open is public comment about general items or about items that we'll be addressing today, whereas later on we'll have public comment for the budget hearing. So I'll go ahead and invite the first person that has signed up, which is Marcia Kelly. So Mrs. Kelly, if you could take up to 3 minutes to provide your public comment, we would welcome it.
It's Ms. Kelly.
Ms. Kelly, my apologies.
Is it not Ms. Story? I wanted to call attention to the board of the Los and Salem community.
Could you actually turn on your mic? Press the green button.
I want to call attention to the board to the loss to the community of Kent Aldrich, who died on the 6th of June. And why is he important to the transit district? I met Kent in 1974, and in 1976 he was elected as mayor of Salem for the first of 3 terms. In 1977, as he was looking at the budget, and the transit district was being operated by the city, and there were places that they were sort of going outside of the city, and there were places that there were little shuttles that were going to where it was outside of the city but getting transportation. He decided to form a task force to study a regional transportation system and what we could go forward with. And in 1976, he'd asked me if I'd serve on any board or commission, because he wanted to get single people and he wanted to get young people involved in the community. So I told him very blithely, well, if there was something about public transportation or buses, I'd do something like that, because I really like buses. I got a call from his secretary at my office, and she said, would you be willing to serve on this committee? And I asked when it was meeting, and I checked with my boss, and I came back down and said, yes, I could do that. And she said, it's good. Kent assured me you would do this, and your name's already gone to the newspaper. The city council, after the transit task force suggested an elected board, like the city council tweaked it some, added some members from the city council and members from the counties, and also went to the legislature to get enabling legislation in 1979. It's important for the history of the city, and it was also important to know how important this was to Kent. At his reception, there were the All-America City Award. There was a state of the city that the first thing he talked about was transit. And there was a picture of he and Senator Courtney, then councilperson Courtney, standing in front of a bus because it was the day of the election to form the district in 1979. So I just wanted to call attention to the fact that working together and also having a vision and making sure that more than just the city was served was really important to this community.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you.
You might want to take a look. He did a lot of other things. Check his obituary on the web.
Thank you. Next, we have Donald Davis.
Hello, my name is Donald Davis. I am here to discuss a recent trip I took via bike and train to Eugene, and then I took Route 91 up to Mackenzie River. So there were just a few things that I noticed at that transit station that I thought could be implemented, thoughts, ideas, that sort of thing. One thing I noticed there is that the transit station there in Eugene is very large, and the navigation waypoints are not as good as the waypoints we have here at the main station downtown. So kudos to that. Also, could you put the picture up? I did notice though that they had wheelchair charging stations in the facility there. And I have seen electric mobility scooters being used on our transit station here, particularly Route 17, because that's where the low-income services are at. So I thought that this could be a great addition to the Cherriots, especially as the new transit station is going in. Something to consider adding as a way to better serve people with limited mobility needs. And I also just want to make a comment on Route 91, which is the route for Mackenzie River. It stops at the ranger station. It only operates during the summer hours whenever conditions are better. And I know that there has been some consideration to expanding like interregional routes, and so that might be something that we consider if we're going to do a route over to Bend, because Bend is a very popular, tourist destination, and there is no current bus service either through Greyhound or Cherriots or the Bend or Sisters regional bus travel to access that section of the Oregon from the Willamette Valley. So something to consider, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Donald. That is it for signed public comment. I'll see if any members of the public would like to present comment now. Okay, not seeing any. I would like to note, however, for the record, that we did receive email public testimony from Anton Brown. I want to acknowledge receipt of that and convey that I've asked General Manager Pollack to direct staff to respond to that particular concern. So with that, we'll conclude the public hearing, and I will go ahead and open the budget hearing. So this is now time designated for members of the public to testify before the board on the approved budget as shown in LB-1 or programs within the budget. And here I will invite Kathy Lincoln, the chair of our budget committee, to provide the first public comment.
Thank you, President Davison and members of the board. and General Manager Pollock. I am pleased to present.
Kathy, can you press the button?
Oh, okay. Does that work?
Perfect.
I am pleased to present to you the Budget Committee's recommendation to adopt the fiscal year 2024 budget for Salem Area Mass Transit District. The Budget Committee met on May 2nd, 2023 to review the proposed budget. Thank you to General Manager Alan Pollock and the Cherriots staff for all their hard work in preparing and reviewing the proposed budget with us, including the budget person, Denise LaRue. The committee voted unanimously to approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $133,854,681 and taxes at a rate of .7609 per $1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes in the general fund. The budget has appropriated funds of $95,500,405 and a reserve fund of $38,354,276. It will fund the continuing modernization of equipment and processes, including an impressive list of projects, including zero-emission buses, electronic fare payment system, South Salem Transit Center Mobility Hub, intelligent transportation system, transit signal priority, and management and resource tracking instruments. Additional items to be funded in the fiscal year 2024 approved budget include enhanced security measures, increased facility maintenance staffing, and various additional positions. Cherriots is moving forward on a strong financial basis. Salem Area Mass Transit District will be able to continue to provide world-class customer service throughout the district in the coming years. We all appreciate your commitment and hard work, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of the budget process.
Thank you, Chairwoman Lincoln. Here, I'll invite other members of the public that might like to provide public comment on the budget, and seeing none.
Any questions?
Oh yeah, any questions for Chairwoman Lincoln? Okay, no questions. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and close the budget hearing, and then we can proceed to deliberation of the budget hearing, and unless there are specific items that we would like to deliberate on, would someone like to make a motion?
I move the board adopt resolution number 2023-07 to adopt the FY 2023-24 budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing taxes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please.
I just want to thank our committee chair, Kathy Lincoln, for her service, and CFO LaRue for all of the work put into the budget, and really every budget committee member. The amount of preparation they do for one document in one meeting is really commendable, and I just think it's a great service both to the district and the community. So if you're out there listening, thank you very much.
I'd like to echo that and add that I imagine that budget creation involves a whole lot of everyone. And so to everybody who had a hand in that, thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, all motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So next we'll proceed to the consent calendar, which if there are no issues with the items on there or nobody requests to pull an item there, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to the district's donation of Cherriots bus passes to United Way, which is an item on our consent calendar. And I just think it's really worth celebrating both the work they do and our participation in that work. And so I don't think it merits a full presentation by staff, but I don't want it to be overlooked either, because every time we see it come up on the consent calendar, which is about once a year, I feel really good about it. And so thank you for the opportunity to say something.
Thank you, Director Carney. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll move to our first action item, which is a security contract extension.
And I'll ask Karen Garcia, our Security and Emergency Management Manager, to present the report.
Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. This evening, shall the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract extension with DePaul Industries, the DPI group, for security services unarmed to begin July 1 of 2023 for an amount not to exceed $275,000. So in order for Cherriots to provide a world-class customer experience to our riders, the community, and the employees, we partner with a number of organizations to assist us in providing a safe and secure environment. At the transit centers, we have a memorandum of understanding with the City of Salem Police Department to assist us in that effort, as well as a contract with PPC Solutions for our private security at the transit centers. The Del Webb Operations Headquarters is not serviced by either one of those agreements, but it does house our Operations Division, which includes a number of departments, a significant number of our staff, and many material assets for the district. So it's an important location, even though it's not open to the public and doesn't provide a place for us to provide the service from. In July of 2021, 2 years ago, we contracted with the DPI group to provide on-site security at the Del Webb Operations Headquarters. It's an open campus there, meaning that the fences are open during the majority of our hours of service. So that open fencing does make us vulnerable to unauthorized persons and incidences that can occur off the street. So by partnering with DPI, our goal was to reduce unauthorized entry onto the property, increase safety for our personnel and our assets, and reduce the risk of loss. And we have seen a significant improvement in those areas over the last 2 years. So until we can secure the perimeter of that facility, which is coming in a capital project down the road in the near future, we'd like to continue that on-site security service to make sure that we can provide the safest environment possible. This contract extension would be for the coming fiscal year, so from July 1 of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. It would provide one officer on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to provide security services there. For fiscal impact, the contract amount is included in the fiscal year 23-24 general fund budget under the Security and Emergency Management Department, which is part of the Deputy General Manager Division. And again, the total cost is not to exceed $275,000. So staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract extension with DePaul Industries, the DPI group, for security services unarmed at the Del Webb Operations Headquarters for an amount not to exceed $275,000. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Manager Garcia? Okay, seeing no questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract extension with DePaul Industries, the DPI group, for security services unarmed at the Del Webb Operations Headquarters for an amount not to exceed $275,000.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the item? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we'll proceed to the new action item, which was added at the top of the agenda, and I'll ask Director Carney to introduce it.
Thank you, President Davidson. So the action item that we added, which is asking for or seeking board direction and consensus on guidance to give me as the policy committee representative for the Salem-Kaiser Area Transportation Study that is run by the Mid-Willamette Valley COG. They are updating or beginning the process to update their guidance documents, specifically the documents around composition of the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the cooperative agreement and the committee bylaws that sort of govern the actions both of the policy committee and of the technical advisory committee. So this has been discussed for a few meetings leading up to our meeting that will take place next week on the 27th. And it's the result of 2020 census data that modified the areas included in the Salem urban area. And these changes include the addition and subtraction of multiple census blocks to the urban area, with the most significant change being the addition of the city of Almsville. So this change in our boundary will impact the governing documents or the guidance documents that guide the behavior of the policy committee, because it provides an opportunity to add another voting member to the policy committee. And with those changes, there's possibility for additional changes to the cooperative agreement that might refine the decision-making process that the policy committee follows, potentially to be one that is more equitable and representative for our metropolitan planning area. And so there's a discussion right now, or at this meeting next Tuesday, about how to approach this process. And so what I'm hoping for board direction on, or board consensus on, is the idea that a process that includes an outside facilitator can help us better reflect the needs and priorities of the community and all members of the policy committee. And really that's, I think, the whole of it. And so I'm happy to answer what questions I can.
Sure. Are there any questions? And then I'd maybe invite you to make a motion so then we can have discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no questions.
Okay. So I move that the board endorse the use of a facilitator to work with the SCATS Policy Committee to update guidance documents and authorize me as the district's SCATS representative to communicate that endorsement.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll open it up for discussion. Director Duncan. We actually can't hear you, Director Duncan. And I'm not good enough at lip reading. Okay. Generally supportive. Understood. Thank you, Director Duncan. I'd just like to take the opportunity to say that I think it's always a good idea to take opportunities when presented to take a look at bylaws or governing documents. I know this body, during just my short tenure on the board, we've updated our own bylaws. We've updated the bylaws of advisory committees. I think it's just a healthy thing for organizations and certainly governments to do regularly. And with this, decennial decision around the census, I think that's a wonderful opportunity. Given that, we're dealing with multiple jurisdictions that have competing interests, a facilitator makes a whole lot of sense. So in complete support. And I do actually want to commend you on using as few acronyms as possible, because you very easily could have said SCATS, which is the MPO run by the COG, and that would have made only a little bit of sense.
Just a few of us.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimous. Director Duncan, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll proceed to the general manager's report.
Thank you. I do have a few items to report. First, a couple of weeks ago in my GM Weekly Report, I did share with you our recent hosting of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Transportation Safety Institute course, The Fundamentals of Bus Collision Investigation, where several members of our staff, along with Lane Transit and several other agencies, attended the course. As the host, we were recognized by the TSI, the Institute, for being a host, and presented this certificate to the district for our effort, cooperation in hosting the course, June 5th through June 9th. And so I just wanted to show the certificate to the board for that great hosting that we did. And thanks to the operations team who did the majority of the work in getting that organized and set up. I also want to direct your attention, you all should have received your board talking points from Communications Division for this coming month. And you also previously should have received the letter, and I think it's in your packet, on the UMO soft launch of the electronic fare system as part of the soft launch group, and you will be hearing from staff the next week or two about getting your cards and getting set up so you can be part of the test group for that. I'd like to share some good news on ridership. So for the month of May, we provided 280,935 rides. That is the largest ridership month since February of 2020. So the last full month before COVID. And so as I've been reporting, slowly but surely, we're getting ridership back. We only lost out by less than about 5,000 rides in February 2020, 10,000 by January of 2020, and actually, if we extrapolate 5 months of ridership up to the full year, we will likely surpass our yearly ridership for the years 2018 and 2016 and be knocking on the door for 2017 and 2019. So we're almost back with our ridership. So good news there. Just a reminder, next month starts the new fiscal year, and part of the process is we are decoupling work sessions and board meetings. So they'll be separate, and there'll also be a new 5:30 p.m. start. And just so you know, for the June or July 13th work session, we will be adding a special meeting component to that to handle primarily officer elections and an executive session. So with that concludes my report.
Thank you, General Manager Pollack. Next, we'll turn our attention to the Board of Directors reports, and I'll go ahead and invite Director Navarro to provide his report.
Thank you, President Davidson. So lots happening in Kaiser. You know, if you haven't seen it already, there's been a beautiful bus that's riding through town with a sign that says "To Ride with Pride." And the Kaiser's, sorry, there's like an echo on. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, we can hear you. Well, we can only hear you. If there's background noise, we can't hear that.
Okay, perfect. So Kaiser had its 40th birthday this month, and there was a huge celebration at the Civic Center. It was really awesome. It was a lot more different than I had anticipated. I felt like it was kind of celebrating, initially I felt like it was kind of celebrating the history of Kaiser, and it did do that, but it also celebrated what Kaiser is now. And so I really appreciated that. There was I attended the Kaiser United meeting where we got to see some presentations from local organizations partnering in the community, attended Coffee with Kathy, got to sit in on the CAC meeting this month, which was really interesting because we got to hear about some some really important issues. I got a preview on the survey that we got to see today. And it's just always interesting hearing from folks in the community and issues that they're facing when they're riding transit. And that's a perfect place for that. And lastly, Kaiser is developing a strategic plan for the future to guide the organization in serving the community over the next 5 years. If you haven't already, you have about 6 more days to be able to give your opinion on that. You can find more information at the City of Kaiser's website. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Navarro. Director Carney.
Thank you, President Davidson. As I mentioned in our last action item, the next meeting of the SCATS Policy Committee is not until next week. And in addition to the update to the MPO composition and cooperative agreement and some tip modifications, there's also a note that the next meeting of the Metropolitan Transportation Safety Action Plan Steering Committee will be in July, but no date certain determined yet. But that is a committee that I have the pleasure of serving on, and I'm really passionate about it, and so I'm super excited for our next meeting. So I will be looking forward to reporting back to this group. And then I also wanted to say happy one day late, first day of summer to my fellow board members and everyone here and anyone listening. And for those that were in or around downtown Salem, it was Make Music Day yesterday, and I don't know if there was any musicians in the immediate environment around the Transit Mall, but it seems like a good opportunity to participate and support some arts and culture in our community. So I would encourage us to think about that in advance of the event next year. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carney. Director Hinojosa-Pressey.
I will keep this segment a little bit short because I'm sure that Director Duncan is probably going to also try and uplift the month of June and the anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And I'm so excited and proud that Cherriots has been able to roll out their Pride bus, and getting to see it around town is, I don't know, very uplifting. And so from my end, I just want to make sure to uplift our trans, Black, and Latina leaders that led the Stonewall riots, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. And this is very important to me because there has been well over 500 anti-trans bills introduced in this country. Over 82 have passed, and 365 of those are active. We are in a time where there is significant hate aimed towards our trans community. And also, I wanted to uplift that I think last week was the anniversary of DACA, Deferred Action. And there are, most of those kids now are full-grown adults from that have apparently a median income of $30,000. Most have careers. Most have also have at least some post-high school education. They have children, and there are still currently many people that would be eligible for DACA but are unable to receive that status due to the decision 2 years ago in July 2021, and we haven't had any sort of meaningful immigration reform since 1985. So on top of uplifting our trans family, I also want to make sure that we're uplifting our immigrant communities that are constantly at risk and being attacked as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Hinojosa-Pressey. Director Duncan, would you like to provide your report?
Thank you, Director Davidson, Chair Davidson. So I will start with business. So I attended the MWAC Mid-Willamette Valley Area Commission on Transportation meeting on June 1st, and it was fairly brief. We only had a couple major items, but the biggest one was ODOT is requesting that we begin a new 2-year work plan, an ACT is what it's called. So the work plan is to include interest areas and priorities specific to each one, 2-year goals with desired outcomes, et cetera. And I sit on the steering committee for the MWACT, but this is the very first time I've done so, and I should have been able to be in this meeting, but unfortunately it was not at a time that I was able to attend. I appreciate President Davidson writing in they invited him to come in and be the alternate, and he was much more eloquent than I could have been about Cherriots' priorities and making sure that they were heard, so I really appreciate you coming in with the assist in doing that. So thank you so much. I also, though, would like to call attention to Pride Month, and I really thank Dr. Enos Pressey. You came with the numbers and the stats that I did not come with, but I wanted to say that for me, and I know for others, seeing the Pride bus drive around has been fantastic. The mental health of our community is low. The support is around and we hear it, but unfortunately a lot of the hate sounds louder, even if it isn't actually louder. It gets amplified easier than the love does. And in particular, having something that is so symbolic, but also so loud and gets to be so positive in a loud way in our community, I think is wonderful. And I just want to call attention in particular to the youth in our movement and kind of just our youth in general, who are really some of the biggest allies from the beginning that we've had. We've seen a major movement, and I think it's worth celebrating. And we need to continue to look to our youth as our leaders and listen to them because they're very smart and they know what they're doing. And I appreciate how many people came out for Pride this year. It was we don't know for sure if it was the biggest we've had, but we had something like 400 people march from the Capitol to the library, and that was amazing. And I loved that the last thing I saw when I was leaving was the Pride bus leaving the train station on my way out of town, and that was really cool. So yeah, it was a good month. I'm going to keep my report brief. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Duncan. I'll go ahead and provide my report. Not too much to report on. In my capacity on the board of the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, they, like just about every other local government, they approved and adopted a budget. They have also been involved in the legislative session this year, and it looks like their key legislative priority, which is some money towards Council of Governments across the state to assist in economic development, will in fact pass, which is huge. This is something that has been a priority of the Council of Governments for at this point at least 2 sessions, probably 3, and the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments has really led this effort. Other Council of Governments and economic development districts across the state will benefit as a result of this legislation, but it was at the initiative of the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, which is really great to see. There's also been a fair amount of talk about regional transit at the Council of Governments. One bill that we were monitoring closely was House Bill 2662, which would have convened a task force to study the extension of the West train down to Salem. Ultimately, that bill looks like it will die, or it has died, in which case that will not occur through legislative action. However, that is something that the Council of Governments is interested in convening independently of the legislature. And so if that does occur, of course, we would be very interested in making sure that we're part of that table. So, or rather, we're at the table, not the table. And that concludes my report. I will take the opportunity to acknowledge that this is very likely the last public meeting I will have as chairing as board president. A few people have asked me whether or not I like it, and I very promptly say that it's the best fake job I've ever had. And it's true. It's the wages are terrible, but really wonderful, very gratifying. I'm able to work with some of the best people, both on the board and the people that I'm able to interact with on a semi-regular basis here at Cherriots. I think I'll have an opportunity to provide prepared remarks later, but I just wanted to say that it has been a privilege. And with that, we're adjourned.